Across a 50-mile radius surrounding the city of Bordeaux, every military checkpoint and civilian thoroughfare had received explicit directives. Apprehend Robert de La Rochefoucauld, the individual then designated as France's most wanted saboteur. His recent notoriety stemmed from a series of audacious acts. The successful demolition of a critical Nazi munitions plant, followed by a brutal escape from incarceration, where 3 guards were reportedly neutralized in hand-to-hand combat. Prior to this, records indicate he had commandeered a Gestapo staff car at gunpoint, a feat accomplished directly after a perilous leap from a vehicle transporting him to a firing squad. However, the circumstances now differed significantly. The Gestapo possessed comprehensive intelligence, his true identity, his physical description, and a detailed dossier of his background. Every exit route from the city was effectively sealed by extensive roadblocks. German patrols systematically scoured the streets, meticulously inspecting every vehicle and individual. Escape appeared to be an impossibility. The operative was, by all accounts, genuinely ensnared. As de La Rochefoucauld surveyed the black and white garments provided by his resistance contact, a complete Catholic nun's habit, a wry resolve settled upon him. The sheer audacity of the disguise, predicated on the unlikelihood of German forces scrutinizing a religious sister, presented itself as his sole, improbable avenue to freedom. To comprehend the extraordinary trajectory that led de La Rochefoucauld to this critical juncture, it is necessary to examine his earlier life, specifically an encounter that occurred when he was merely 15 years old, his initial meeting with Adolf Hitler. Born into the French aristocracy, his family's residence was situated in the immediate vicinity of the Eiffel Tower, symbolizing a life of considerable privilege. His education, conducted in exclusive institutions across Switzerland and Austria, what reflected a childhood insulated from hardship. In 1938, as part of his schooling, de La Rochefoucauld's class undertook a visit to Adolf Hitler's mountain retreat, the Berghof, located near Berchtesgaden. Upon the arrival of the Führer's motorcade, the young Robert found himself in sufficiently close proximity for Hitler himself to reportedly approach and offer a paternal gesture, a gentle pat on the cheek. This interaction was, at the time, perceived by the teenager as the realization of a profound ambition. Contemporary accounts suggest he, along with his classmates, regarded Hitler as a visionary statesman, even decorating their bicycles with swastika flags as a mark of their youthful admiration. This initial, youthful reverence, however, dissipated entirely with the onset of widespread conflict across Europe. In May 1940, the invasion of France by Nazi Germany irrevocably altered de La Rochefoucauld's privileged existence. His father, a prominent nobleman with established links to the burgeoning Free French movement, a resistance against the Nazi occupation, was subsequently apprehended and designated a prisoner of war. In response, Robert, his mother, and his 9 siblings evacuated Paris, seeking refuge at their ancestral country estate. This relocation, however, quickly revealed that even ancient aristocratic lineage offered no immunity from the pervasive reach of German occupation. A crucial turning point occurred when a local postman discreetly informed Robert of an intercepted communication, a letter denouncing the young aristocrat directly to the Gestapo. This intelligence confirmed that he too was now a primary target for the German secret police. De La Rochefoucauld's initial outrage at the brutality of the occupying forces hardened into a resolute determination. He resolved to escape France and actively engage in the fight against the Germans. By the spring of 1942, at the age of 18, Robert successfully established contact with the burgeoning French resistance movement, formally committing himself to the clandestine struggle against the Nazi regime. Having successfully navigated the perilous escape from Fort de La Rochefoucauld, now operating under the carefully constructed alias of René Lié, commenced his desperate journey southward. This assumed identity, subtly feminine in its construction, was a critical element of his deception, designed to obscure his true renown as a saboteur and evade the relentless pursuit of the Gestapo. His objective was clear: to reach the neutral territory of Spain, a gateway he hoped would lead him ultimately to the Free French forces in England. The journey through occupied French territory was an exercise in extreme caution and constant vigilance. Guided by the clandestine pathways of the resistance network, a labyrinthine system of safe houses and trusted contacts, he traversed the fractured landscape of a nation under the heel of occupation. Each village, every crossroads, presented a potential trap. The route led him through the Vichy region of France, a landscape scarred by conflict yet teeming with hidden dangers, before culminating at the formidable natural barrier of the Pyrenees Mountains. The crossing of these towering peaks was an ordeal in itself. Under the cover of darkness, and with the aid of experienced resistance guides, de La Rochefoucauld negotiated the treacherous passes and remote trails. His companions on this perilous leg of the journey were two British Royal Air Force airmen, similarly displaced and seeking passage to Allied territory. Their shared predicament forged an unspoken bond of mutual reliance amidst the harsh elements and the ever-present threat of discovery. The arduous ascent and descent, demanding immense physical fortitude, was undertaken with the fervent hope that the Spanish border represented not merely a geographical demarcation, but a threshold to freedom. However, the reality that awaited them on the other side was far from the anticipated sanctuary. Upon their immediate entry into Spanish territory, the trio was apprehended by the authorities of General Franco's regime. Spain, while officially neutral in the wider European conflict, maintained an authoritarian stance and a complex relationship with both Allied and Axis powers. Allied personnel, particularly those attempting to transit through the country without official sanction, were routinely detained. De La Rochefoucauld, alongside the two British airmen, found himself consigned to an internment camp, an unexpected and profoundly frustrating setback in his mission. For 2 grueling months, he endured the harsh realities of captivity within Spanish confines. During this period, the maintenance of his fabricated identity became paramount. He was compelled to sustain the elaborate deception that he was a downed British aviator, a narrative carefully chosen to align with the circumstances of his companions. The consequences of his true identity as a French saboteur being revealed were stark. Immediate deportation back to occupied France, a fate that would almost certainly have led to his capture by the Gestapo and subsequent execution. Thus, within the confines of the internment camp, de La Rochefoucauld's fight for survival continued, a silent battle waged through cunning and unwavering resolve. The diplomatic efforts of British authorities ultimately secured the release of the third individual from internment, alongside the 2 Royal Air Force pilots. Once safely transferred to neutral territory, de La Rochefoucauld was promptly escorted to the British embassy. There he encountered British intelligence officers who, having observed his remarkable journey with considerable interest, presented him with an unexpected proposition. Rather than simply enlisting with General Charles de Gaulle's Free French forces, he was formally invited to become a clandestine operative for the British. His extraordinary resourcefulness and daring in traversing occupied France and reaching Spain had profoundly impressed the British assessment teams. His profile was deemed exceptionally suitable, a highly educated aristocrat, fluent in both French and English, who had successfully adopted the guise of a British airman during his escape from Nazi-occupied territory. These attributes rendered him an ideal candidate for a newly established unit dedicated to unconventional warfare. This organization, known as the Special Operations Executive, SOE, had been formed by Winston Churchill in 1940 with the express directive to set Europe ablaze through acts of sabotage behind enemy lines. De La Rochefoucauld, recognizing the profound significance of this challenge, accepted without hesitation. Prior to his departure from Spain, a crucial consultation took place with General de Gaulle himself. De La Rochefoucauld sought the Free French leader's endorsement to serve under British command, a request that de Gaulle emphatically approved. Historical records document de Gaulle's direct instruction to de La Rochefoucauld: "Do it. Even allied to the devil, it's for Free France." With the unequivocal blessing of both French and British authorities, Robert de La Rochefoucauld formally committed to Churchill's covert network of saboteurs. The British ambassador in Spain, acknowledging the unconventional nature of the recruitment, reportedly jested with de La Rochefoucauld, remarking upon the unparalleled courage and skill of British operatives, whilst quipping, "It's just that their French accents are appalling." This anecdote underscored the strategic advantage La Rochefoucauld represented. A native Frenchman whose flawless command of the language and cultural understanding would enable him to operate within occupied France without attracting the suspicion that often compromised British agents. Upon his clandestine arrival on British soil in early 1943, La Rochefoucauld was immediately inducted into the covert echelons of the Special Operations Executive. Records indicate his youth was notable even among the selected operatives. Barely out of his teens, yet possessing an unwavering resolve to directly counter the Nazi occupation. Over the ensuing months, a rigorous curriculum of clandestine warfare was meticulously imparted by seasoned British instructors. At the dedicated training facility known as RAF Ringway, situated in the environs of Manchester, La Rochefoucauld underwent an intensive metamorphosis. He was instructed in the precise art of aerial insertion, mastering descents from low-flying aircraft into potentially hostile territory. Proficient handling of various firearms became second nature, alongside the intricate science of explosives, encompassing their deployment and neutralization. Furthermore, the curriculum extended to the brutal efficacy of unarmed combat, enabling an operative to neutralize an adversary within mere seconds. Perhaps most strikingly, the SOE's unconventional methods included the extraordinary measure of recruiting individuals from penal institutions. Hardened criminals, possessing specialized knowledge, were temporarily released from incarceration to impart their expertise in surreptitious entry, including the meticulous techniques for breaching sophisticated safe mechanisms and the delicate craft of lockpicking. This unparalleled training regime forged La Rochefoucauld into an instrument of precision sabotage, a highly capable operative prepared for the most perilous assignments behind enemy lines. Following months of intense preparation and specialized training, June 1943 marked the operational deployment of La Rochefoucauld. At the age of 19, he was covertly inserted into Nazi-occupied France. Under the cover of darkness, La Rochefoucauld, accompanied by 2 British operatives, parachuted into the rugged terrain of the Morvan region. Their mission directive was explicit: to cripple German infrastructure deep within enemy territory. Upon infiltration, La Rochefoucauld established contact with a local cell of the Maquis resistance, a guerrilla unit operating under the command of an individual known only as the Pope. In the vicinity of Avalon, this amalgamated team commenced its campaign of disruption against German supply lines. Records indicate La Rochefoucauld personally participated in the demolition of a critical electrical substation, which supplied power to the local rail network. Furthermore, he was instrumental in planting explosive charges that successfully severed key railway tracks in the area. The resulting paralysis of German logistical movements was precisely the outcome anticipated by Allied command in London, a strategic objective achieved with notable efficacy by the young saboteur on his inaugural assignment. However, the efficacy of this initial operation was swiftly overshadowed by unforeseen circumstances. As La Rochefoucauld awaited clandestine extraction by a Royal Air Force aircraft, intelligence reports indicate a local collaborator provided information to German authorities. Subsequently, Gestapo agents rapidly converged on his location, effecting the capture of the operative. This apprehension was likely precipitated by immediate local tip-offs following the explosions. La Rochefoucauld was then subjected to rigorous interrogations by German forces, who sought to extract comprehensive details regarding resistance networks and Allied espionage activities. Despite the considerable duress and pressure applied, La Rochefoucauld maintained absolute silence, refusing to divulge any information. Frustrated by his unwavering resolve, German military authorities issued an immediate order for the execution of the captured terrorist. Barely out of his teenage years, La Rochefoucauld now faced the imminent prospect of a firing squad. Under stringent German custody, La Rochefoucauld was conveyed aboard a military lorry towards the city of Auxerre, where his execution was imminent. As the vehicle rumbled through the French countryside, La Rochefoucauld, facing certain death, recognized that his options were exhausted, save for a desperate gamble. A surge of primal instinct propelled him into action. With unexpected force, he sprang from his seat and launched himself from the moving lorry, catching his German captors entirely unawares. He made immediate ground as the astonished soldiers fumbled to bring their rifles to bear. Rifle fire erupted, rounds whistling past his retreating form, yet none found their intended mark. The 19-year-old sprinted through the streets of Auxerre, evading the sporadic gunfire in a desperate dash for liberty. After traversing several city blocks, de La Rochefoucauld rounded a corner and encountered an improbable spectacle. A formal black limousine, adorned with swastika pennants, had idled outside the local Gestapo headquarters. Its driver stood some distance away, evidently preoccupied. Crucially, the engine remained running, and the keys were in the ignition. Recognizing this extraordinary, fleeting opportunity, de La Rochefoucauld sprang into the driver's seat of the German staff car and accelerated sharply. The powerful vehicle peeled away from the curb, and within moments, he was speeding out of the city onto the main national road. German road patrols, having been alerted to the prisoner's escape, attempted to intercept the speeding vehicle. However, de La Rochefoucauld drove directly through a military roadblock before the occupation forces could respond effectively. Once well beyond Auxerre, under the cover of darkness, de La Rochefoucauld abandoned the commandeered vehicle on a rural roadside, continuing his journey on foot through fields and woodlands. Exhausted and still clad in his prison attire, he eventually sought refuge at the residence of a small-town grocer, with the hope of finding sympathetic assistance. The French shopkeeper not only provided shelter, but also facilitated contact with local resistance operatives who were prepared to aid the fugitive saboteur. Through the assistance of these allies, de La Rochefoucauld successfully evaded detection, securing passage beneath a train destined for Paris, remaining just ahead of German search parties systematically combing the area. During the journey, he concealed himself beneath a washroom basin whenever military personnel conducted inspections, the tension palpable during each encounter. However, his ingenuity and sheer fortune prevailed. Following hours of tense travel, de La Rochefoucauld disembarked the train in Paris, seamlessly blending into the anonymity of the capital's populace. He later recounted this moment, stating, "Upon arrival in Paris, I experienced a profound sense of liberation." Having successfully navigated the perilous journey to Paris in late 1943, the operative had, for a second time, narrowly evaded capture. However, the capital offered no genuine sanctuary. His notoriety as a primary target for the Gestapo, who possessed his full identity and physical description, necessitated immediate action. British intelligence, acutely aware of the escalating threat, initiated plans for his swift exfiltration from occupied French territory before the German security apparatus could tighten its grip. Following a period of recuperation and clandestine shelter, with family contacts in Paris, during which he regained his strength, de La Rochefoucauld received urgent directives in February 1944. He was instructed to proceed to the coast of Brittany for a rendezvous. The designated extraction point involved navigating a heavily monitored coastline, a task fraught with peril given the constant German patrols. Under the cloak of darkness, near the commune of Brignogan-Plages, he was successfully transferred from a small vessel to a waiting British submarine, commencing a hazardous underwater passage towards England. This subterranean journey, deep beneath the Channel's surface, presented a new, equally profound challenge to his survival, echoing the sheer audacity of his previous escape from the firing squad lorry. During the voyage, the submarine's crew detected the distinct acoustic signatures of a German anti-submarine patrol. The subsequent deployment of depth charges created violent concussions that reverberated throughout the vessel's hull, each explosion a stark reminder of the ever-present danger. Within the confined space, de La Rochefoucauld endured these harrowing moments, the metallic groans of the submarine punctuated by the terrifying impacts. Historical accounts record his later admission regarding this ordeal. "I have never experienced such profound fear in my life." Despite the extreme duress, the submarine successfully completed its mission, delivering de La Rochefoucauld safely to British shores. By the spring of 1944, de La Rochefoucauld found himself back in London. The city, after years of wartime austerity, was pervaded by a distinct air of optimism, almost celebratory, as the inevitability of an Allied victory began to manifest. Historical accounts from de La Rochefoucauld himself describe this period. "We were invited to the best houses. Girls fell into our arms." For a young Parisian aristocrat, London presented tempting comforts. However, de La Rochefoucauld possessed no intention of remaining safely detached from the ongoing conflict. He immediately volunteered for another mission to occupied France, an undertaking even more ambitious and fraught with peril than his previous assignments. British strategists designated his next objective, a colossal munitions factory located at Smida, just outside Bordeaux. This extensive industrial complex constituted a vital production hub for ammunition destined for the German army. Its disruption was deemed critical to the success of the impending Allied invasion of France. The Special Operations Executive, SOE, often colloquially referred to as Churchill's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, tasked de La Rochefoucauld with infiltrating this facility and orchestrating its destruction from within. In May 1944, merely weeks before the D-Day landings, de La Rochefoucauld, operating under the codename Sun, parachuted once more into occupied French territory. And his mission was to lead a daring operation to penetrate and dismantle the Nazi ordnance plant. Adopting the guise of an ordinary French workman, de La Rochefoucauld seamlessly infiltrated the sprawling Smida munitions complex near Bordeaux. The facility was immense, encompassing over a square mile of factories and barracks, employing some 5,500 laborers who toiled to supply Hitler's forces. While outright demolition of such a vast complex was impractical, de La Rochefoucauld's objective was to incapacitate its most critical operational components. Over 4 arduous days, he systematically infiltrated the plant, operating directly beneath the observation of German guards. During this period, he meticulously smuggled approximately 40 kilograms of high explosives into the facility. His methodologies were characterized by ingenious discretion. Records indicate he concealed bricks of plastic explosive within hollowed-out loaves of bread, which he carried as if they constituted his daily lunch. Further charges were secreted within the specially constructed soles of his work boots. Incrementally, the young saboteur assembled his device from these components, strategically positioning the charges at critical junctures within the factory's infrastructure. By 20th May 1944, all preparations were complete. That afternoon, de La Rochefoucauld activated his timers and calmly departed the munitions plant, emerging seamlessly with the departing shift of laborers. Minutes later, a series of thunderous explosions ripped through Smida. The blasts were of such magnitude that their concussive force resonated for miles across the French countryside. Within the compound, warehouses filled with munitions were swiftly engulfed by flames and thick black smoke. De La Rochefoucauld was compelled to sprint, then cycle furiously on a stolen bicycle to escape the burgeoning conflagration he had initiated, odds alarms blaring in his wake. Only once he had reached a secure distance did he pause, catching his breath and surveying the devastation he had unleashed. That evening, a triumphant coded message was transmitted to London, confirming the factory's destruction. The reply from SOE headquarters was concise and unequivocally satisfied. Filikas, congratulations. Overjoyed by the mission's success, de La Rochefoucauld rendezvoused with a local resistance leader to celebrate. They shared several bottles of fine French wine in exuberant relief, with de La Rochefoucauld later admitting to having consumed rather too much in the euphoria of the moment. He awoke the following morning with a severe hangover, but the Bordeaux munitions works lay in ruins. The operation constituted a resounding success, delivering a significant blow to the German war machine on the very eve of D-Day. Days after the successful demolition of the Bordeaux munitions plant, a feat that had solidified his reputation as a formidable saboteur, circumstances took an unforeseen turn. Cycling along a rural thoroughfare, de La Rochefoucauld encountered a German checkpoint. It was well past the established curfew, and the occupying forces were operating under heightened alert. Attempts to disarm the situation through verbal deception, including the assertion of returning from a romantic liaison, proved unsuccessful. He was apprehended immediately. The operative was subsequently transported to Fort Da, a formidable 16th-century fortress in Bordeaux that had been repurposed as a detention facility. Records indicate his execution was scheduled to proceed as soon as German authorities confirmed his identity. Confined once more within a cell, facing imminent demise, de La Rochefoucauld meticulously assessed his options. Evidence suggests he contemplated activating the cyanide capsule concealed within the heel of his footwear, a measure designed to circumvent the brutality of another firing squad. However, the operative, renowned for his audacious resolve, opted for an alternative, a further, high-stakes escape. Under the guise of a severe medical emergency, de La Rochefoucauld initiated a simulated seizure. Descriptions from later accounts detail a violent convulsion, complete with frothing at the mouth and contorted body movements, enacted with unnerving realism on the cell floor. The attending guard, taken aback by the apparent medical crisis, responded precisely as anticipated. He unlocked the cell door, intent on restraining the distressed prisoner. In that precise moment, de La Rochefoucauld transitioned from feigned incapacitation to decisive action. He seized a substantial wooden table leg, delivering a forceful blow to the guard's cranium. Or this was immediately followed by a lethal maneuver, resulting in a fatal neck injury. De La Rochefoucauld would later attribute his proficiency in close-quarters combat to his rigorous training, stating, "Thank goodness for that pitilessly efficient training." With remarkable speed, he divested the incapacitated guard of his uniform and sidearm, donning the German Feldgendarmerie attire himself. Disguised in the uniform of the German military police, de La Rochefoucauld proceeded with measured steps along the corridor, entering the guardroom. The sentries present had insufficient time to fully register the anomaly before de La Rochefoucauld drew the purloined pistol, neutralizing both individuals. Within a matter of seconds, the saboteur had effectively eliminated his immediate captors. He then exited Fort Da, disappearing into the nocturnal streets of Bordeaux, his impersonation of a German soldier sufficiently convincing to evade immediate detection. Outside the fortress, Bordeaux remained under stringent lockdown. German patrols systematically scoured the city, actively pursuing the individual responsible for the factory sabotage. De La Rochefoucauld navigated the labyrinthine back alleys, making his way to a prearranged safe address he had committed to memory. A resistance contact provided temporary shelter. However, any conventional evacuation from Bordeaux proved impossible due to the extensive manhunt. Roadblocks and mobile patrols effectively sealed every potential egress route from the city. As the cordon tightened, de La Rochefoucauld and his local allies formulated an audacious, albeit unconventional, escape strategy. The sister of his resistance contact, a Catholic nun, provided a spare habit. The following morning, the 6-foot-tall French operative, enveloped in a nun's robe and wimple, emerged onto the main thoroughfare of Bordeaux. With his head bowed and pace deliberately measured, he proceeded through the city in broad daylight. German military personnel, observing the distinctive black and white figure, perceived merely a member of an unassuming religious order. The disguise proved highly effective. De La Rochefoucauld traversed dozens of miles on foot, successfully navigating numerous checkpoints in plain sight without attracting any scrutiny from the enemy. Following his audacious escape from Bordeaux, de La Rochefoucauld successfully navigated the labyrinthine routes of occupied France. He eventually reached the clandestine rendezvous point, the secluded residence of Roger Lance, an SOE agent operating under the codename Aristide, who oversaw resistance operations in that region. Lance, according to records, expressed considerable astonishment at de La Rochefoucauld's manner of arrival, a testament to the sheer ingenuity and peril of his journey, yet welcomed him with gratitude. By this juncture, it was early June 1944, and the continent braced itself for the imminent Allied D-Day invasion of France. Every underground cell and Allied operative had shifted their focus, dedicating all efforts to supporting the impending Normandy landings. London's directive to Lance was clear. The immediate exfiltration of de La Rochefoucauld was not a priority. Indeed, de La Rochefoucauld himself later quipped that, with the invasion underway, he was the last of the worries in London. Rather than arranging his extraction, Aristide received instructions to keep the young saboteur concealed until the immediate post-invasion chaos had subsided. For the foreseeable future, de La Rochefoucauld would be compelled to survive independently within occupied France, with the Gestapo's relentless pursuit still an ever-present threat. Yet, true to his established pattern of audacious action, de La Rochefoucauld did not remain in hiding for an extended period. Following his escape from Bordeaux, the SOE had arranged for him to lie low with a sympathetic woodcutter deep within the forests of southwest France. However, The enforced manual labor and the inherent inaction proved ill-suited to Rochefoucauld's temperament. Restless and resolute in his desire to continue the fight, he soon departed his designated safe house. He subsequently established contact with a roving Maquis resistance group, actively operating within the region. Throughout the summer months of 1944, as Allied forces progressively pushed inland from the Normandy beaches, Rochefoucauld engaged directly in a series of intense guerrilla operations. He led sabotage raids, ambushes, and critical intelligence missions, consistently harassing the retreating German forces. His objective was clear: to contribute whatever possible from behind enemy lines to the efforts of the liberating Allied armies. Despite the Germans being systematically driven from France, the inherent dangers of clandestine warfare continued to dog Rochefoucauld. In one particularly perilous encounter, he was once again apprehended by an enemy patrol. This time, the capture was effected by SS troops, and he was summarily transported to a military outpost for immediate execution. The German forces, evidently having learned from his prior, improbable escapes, intended to dispatch him without delay. Rochefoucauld found himself lined up in an open field, facing a firing squad, is convinced that on this occasion, his extraordinary luck had finally deserted him. However, an extraordinary turn of events intervened dramatically. Just as the firing squad prepared to discharge their rifles, a sudden explosive burst of gunfire erupted from the adjacent tree line. It was a contingent of his fellow Maquis resistance fighters, launching a surprise rescue operation. In the ensuing chaos, Rochefoucauld instinctively threw himself to the ground, scrambling away to safety under the protective cover fire provided by his comrades. He emerged miraculously unscathed from the confrontation, later reflecting, "I had what I needed more than anything else: luck." This singular event underscored the precarious nature of his existence and the almost fated quality of his continued survival. By late August 1944, a pivotal shift occurred across southwestern France. German forces, facing an overwhelming Allied advance, initiated a strategic withdrawal, effectively abandoning Bordeaux. This retreat heralded the long-awaited liberation of the region, a moment of profound significance for a populace that had endured years of occupation. As the tricolor flag, the symbol of French sovereignty, was once again hoisted above Bordeaux, Rochefoucauld, whose clandestine efforts had contributed to this very outcome, observed a peculiar social phenomenon. The city's cafes and public thoroughfares, previously subdued under the omnipresent shadow of occupation, now teemed with men. These individuals, many of whom had maintained a deliberately low profile throughout the conflict, now proudly displayed French uniforms and the distinctive armbands of the resistance. It was later documented that Rochefoucauld expressed profound distaste for the sudden proliferation of self-proclaimed heroes, observing that such ostentation became prevalent only after the immediate threat had receded. Having endured the profound realities of clandestine warfare, including repeated brushes with death and the constant threat of capture, Rochefoucauld held scant regard for those who sought acclaim without having faced comparable perils. His experiences had forged an unyielding conviction regarding genuine sacrifice, rendering him intolerant of what he perceived as opportunistic displays of patriotism. Consequently, Rochefoucauld, driven by an unwavering commitment to the complete eradication of the German presence, elected to continue his active engagement in the conflict. He joined an organized resistance unit, designated Charlie, which was tasked with systematically confronting and neutralizing the remaining pockets of German forces still entrenched within French territory. The war, for Rochefoucauld, was not concluded merely by a general retreat. It necessitated the elimination of every last vestige of occupation. During these final, often desperate campaigns, an incident occurred that Rochefoucauld himself would later recount as a stark illustration of war's inherent absurdity. While navigating the darkened interior of a structure during a reconnaissance mission, Rochefoucauld found himself in immediate proximity to a German soldier who had simultaneously entered from an opposing direction. The encounter was instantaneous and unexpected for both parties. Reflexively, both men drew their pistols and discharged them at point-blank range. In a bizarre twist of fate, neither shot found its mark. An eerie silence descended upon the scene. broken only by the rapid retreat of both individuals, each turning and running back the way they had come. This peculiar, almost farcical exchange underscored the chaotic and often illogical nature of close-quarters combat, a moment that De La Rochefoucauld later reflected upon as a testament to the sheer unpredictability and ultimate senselessness of such engagements. Despite the strategic withdrawal of German forces and the widespread liberation of France, the conflict had not yet concluded for Robert de La Rochefoucauld. As late as early 1945, isolated, tenacious pockets of German resistance continued to occupy strategic positions along the French Atlantic coast. It was into this lingering theater of war that de La Rochefoucauld, with characteristic resolve, volunteered for one final mission of profound strategic importance. In April 1945, as the ultimate cessation of hostilities across Europe appeared imminent, de La Rochefoucauld embarked upon his culminating commando operation. Although the majority of French territory had been liberated, a stubborn contingent of German forces maintained their entrenched positions, having heavily fortified the Gironde estuary, situated to the north of Bordeaux. De La Rochefoucauld put himself forward to lead a small, specialized team tasked with the elimination of an imposing German strongpoint near the village of Saint-Vivien-de-Médoc. This formidable coastal fortification was equipped with substantial artillery, which necessitated neutralization before Allied ground forces could advance further. Under the cloak of deepest night, de La Rochefoucauld and 3 fellow commandos stealthily propelled a collapsible craft down the Gironde River, approaching the enemy stronghold from the seaward flank. Yet the conditions were unforgiving: a moonless expanse, biting cold, and a turbulent sea. With the precision born of extensive experience, the French saboteur guided his men ashore, directly beneath the looming concrete walls of the bunker. Absolute discretion was imperative. The casemate's perimeter was secured by an outer sentry wall, enveloped in camouflage netting and subjected to constant patrols by armed guards. Ever audacious, de La Rochefoucauld elected to proceed first. He ascended the damp, unforgiving exterior, utilizing the camouflage mesh for purchase, hand over hand. Reaching the summit, he penetrated the gloom below, discerning the solitary figure of a German sentry conducting his rounds between the outer wall and the principal bunker structure. Timing his maneuver with meticulous precision, de La Rochefoucauld waited until the guard passed directly beneath his position. Then, with the silent agility of a predator, the saboteur dropped from the wall. He landed upon the unsuspecting German, neutralizing the sentry with chilling efficiency and without a sound. With the outer perimeter successfully breached, de La Rochefoucauld signaled his team to pass up the demolition charges. Moving with swift, synchronized movements, they affixed plastic explosive devices to the bunker's base and along its formidable gun emplacements. De La Rochefoucauld set the timers for a brief duration, and the team discreetly retreated to their inflatable vessel. They were strenuously propelling their craft into the dark expanse of the river Canal du Roi when a colossal detonation rent the nocturnal silence behind them. The charges, detonating within the casemate, obliterated its reinforced concrete structure and rendered its formidable armament inert. By dawn, Allied troops advanced upon the position, encountering minimal resistance. The German defenders, disoriented by the pre-dawn cataclysm, had already withdrawn to their ultimate defensive position at Verdun, further along the coast. De La Rochefoucauld's culminating act of sabotage had achieved its intended objective. The individual whose early life had been marked by a fleeting, youthful admiration for Hitler now stood as a pivotal figure in the dismantling of his regime's last bastions. The culmination of the casemate operation, however, heralded a stark personal cost for Robert de La Rochefoucauld, even as the European conflict drew to its close. On the 19th of April 1945, merely weeks prior to Germany's unconditional surrender, the seasoned operative was conducting reconnaissance in a recently secured sector. Evidence suggests that during this patrol, he inadvertently triggered a concealed landmine. The resulting detonation inflicted severe trauma to his knee, necessitating his immediate hospitalization. For a period exceeding 4 weeks, the battle-hardened saboteur remained under intensive medical care, undergoing surgery and recuperation. It was during this enforced convalescence that the official cessation of hostilities in Europe was declared on the 8th of May 1945. Records indicate de La Rochefoucauld's unwavering commitment to the Allied cause, his involvement persisting until the very precipice of victory. While accounts suggest a profound sense of disappointment at being unable to participate in the public celebrations marking VE Day, he held the unequivocal knowledge that his extensive clandestine efforts had demonstrably accelerated the liberation of France. Following the cessation of hostilities, the magnitude of de La Rochefoucauld's contributions to the Allied cause received formal and extensive recognition from both the French government and its British allies. He was decorated with France's highest honors, including being designated a Chevalier de la Légion d'honneur, an accolade denoting exceptional merit and courage. Further distinctions included the Croix de Guerre, awarded for acts of heroism during combat, and the Médaille de la Résistance, acknowledging his clandestine operations against the occupation. The British, in turn, conferred upon him the Distinguished Service Order, DSO, and the Distinguished Conduct Medal, DCM, specifically citing his audacious effectiveness deep within enemy territory and his remarkable resilience in the face of extreme peril. These awards collectively testified to a career defined by an unwavering commitment to liberty and a singular capacity for unconventional warfare. Yet, for a man whose life had been so inextricably bound to the crucible of conflict, the transition to peacetime was not immediate. Records indicate that de La Rochefoucauld continued his service in uniform for several more years, joining France's elite commando units in the post-war era. His extraordinary skills, honed in the shadows of occupied Europe, found new application in subsequent theaters of conflict. He saw action during the First Indochina War, where he was instrumental in leading commando raids against the Viet Minh forces, demonstrating a continued capacity for daring and decisive action in complex environments. In 1956, the Suez Crisis once again propelled him towards the front lines. He parachuted into Egypt, prepared for further engagement, though the conflict concluded before his unit could commit to combat. Ultimately, after a lifetime marked by extraordinary dedication and an almost preternatural ability to navigate the most dangerous of circumstances, Robert de La Rochefoucauld transitioned from active military service to civilian life. His passing occurred on the 8th of May 2012, at the age of 88. Notably, this date coincided precisely with Victory in Europe Day, marking 67 years to the day since the formal end of the Second World War. It was a synchronicity that, for many, underscored the indelible link between his personal narrative and the monumental historical events he had so profoundly influenced. His legacy endures as a testament to the extraordinary courage and ingenuity of those who fought in the shadows, their deeds often unseen, yet undeniably instrumental in shaping the course of history.